XS Wireless Digital is the perfect wireless audio solution for content creators and filmmakers. Thanks to a 2.4 GHz transmission, XS Wireless Digital is a truly plug-and-play system that allows you to upgrade your in-camera audio with one-button operation. With a variety of configurations to choose from, this entry point into the world of wireless will improve your workflow and will expand the possibilities of how you capture audio for your video. For more information, visit sennheiser.com/xswd.
The new Super 35 sensor that Canon have introduced with the C300 Mark III is quite a big step up from other S35 sensors that they have created before. From the body and the flexibility that gives us in terms of the expansion packs and the interchangeable mount, to the sensor with its increased...
Hello everyone, welcome back to ProAV TV. Thank you very much for joining us for another one of these very quick little informal Q&A sessions. I really enjoy doing these, as I say, every single week. They are one of my favourite things that we do here. It's been a quiet week, to be honest. There's not a huge amount for me to talk about at the beginning of this. For those of you that haven't watched one of these before, the way this works is I have very little prepared for them. I literally just sit here, see what you guys are talking about in the chat on YouTube, on Facebook, and we chat. Talk about anything that you may have a question on, anything topic that we haven't covered that you want to get our opinion on, anything like that. Let me know in the YouTube chat or in Facebook. Otherwise, this will be a rather short little stream. There's a couple of things I do have to talk about at the beginning, though, just to get us started. It has been a very quiet couple of weeks on the channel, so apologies for that. Very little videos have been out. That's been for a number of reasons, holidays, big promotions, all that sort of stuff. But we're also going to go through quite a lot of change over this channel in the next sort of 6 months or so. We have some big plans, but a part of that and part of those plans are that my long-suffering colleague Dan over there, who is now laughing at me, is leaving us. He is moving on to start a new life with his family on the other side of the country, and so is leaving ProAV, which is a very sad time for us all, but also an opportunity to make some changes and start again a little bit. And part of that will be hiring someone new. And so we have a job open right now at ProAV, which is the content creator job. Is my website actually updating for you, Dan? That's frozen. Why is that frozen? Let me quit that and start again. That's strange. So yeah, the content creator job is up on the website, and it's up on LinkedIn, and it's up on Grapevine. And is that working again now, Dan? Interesting. Why has it done that? Try rejoining at your end. So the job is very flexible. Basically, we are just looking for somebody to do what Dan currently does, but maybe in a different way. We can be flexible depending on who applies for it and their own skills and skill set. But the job is a content creator. So the number one thing that we need to do is find a new way of content like this actually getting made on the channel. So right now, Dan handles all of our production, all of our editing. You know, I write the videos, I'm in the videos, but apart from that, they are made by Dan. So Dan completely does all the filmmaking by himself. He does the camera work, he does the lighting, he does the audio. He then, for the piece to camera, the A-roll, and then he goes away and does the B-roll as he edits. So he's editing it at the same time as making B-roll on it. And he basically, from me writing it, I can then leave it over to him, and then he comes back to me with a finished video. And that is a fantastic way for us to work because it speeds us up massively. And, you know, with live streams, he mixes it for me, all the rest of it, and he creates a lot of the content that goes on our social media platforms as well, a lot of the stills photos, the shorter form videos, all of that sort of stuff. So that is the hole that we need to fill. So if you think that you can help us out and come and join the team, bring something new to the team, get in touch, because it's not very often that we change up the way things are going to this extent. So it is a exciting opportunity to be part of a team that is at the forefront of technology in this industry. I mean, we get to play with all of the latest things as they come out. We get to decide what we think about them before the public even knows about them most of the time. It's a constant, never-ending stream of new things to talk about, and it's a very exciting industry to be part of. So yeah, if you want to join the crazy train, get in touch. The other things on a more product point of view that I want to talk about are these little Vespid primes. So DZO Film, who you might know from the Pictor lenses, this is their website here, DZO Film, great little company, making some really good affordable cinema lenses. So they have they've got loads of micro four thirds lenses. We reviewed the Pictor zooms on the channel, and these have been quite popular with our customers as affordable Super 35 cinema zooms. And they have now released these Vespid primes, which is a whole range of affordable cinema primes, and I have them here. These are basically, apart from the Samyang VDSLR lenses, these are some of our most affordable cinema primes that we do. They're more affordable than Canon CNEs or Sigma Cines or Samyang Zines, anything like that. They come in at a lower price point. Really, the only thing that beats them in terms of price point is those Samyang VDSLR lenses, which are a very different build quality. These are full metal construction. They've got a nice picture to them. They are really nice lenses. And so we're taking a look at these on the channel at the moment. And yeah, really impressed so far. One thing that sends them out, makes them stand out from the crowd instantly to a lot of us here, was that the kit comes with a 90mm macro. Now, macro cinema lenses are not that common, really. And this is a 90mm one that comes with this kit. And, you know, the price of these, if we bring them up here on screen, These are available in EF or PL, and they're basically just over £1,000 each lens, which for a cinema lens, you know, that's about a third of the price of a lot of the most common ones, cinema primes that we sell. Here's the 90mm macro, so it's slightly more for a 90mm macro, but that is impressive price point for cinema lenses. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing how these perform. Keep an eye out for a video on those some point very soon. So a couple of questions will come in. Let's get started on those straight away. There's Liam Edwards is saying Dan is a big hole to fill. Yes, indeed. Hello, everyone. Trevor Pinnicky thinks those glass look beautiful. Are they on the lighter side, the Vespids? Yeah. Depends on each one, but yeah, they're pretty light. We'll have the specs. Let's look at, say, the 50mm, for example. Sometimes our website does this. I'm not quite sure why. There we go. Specification. Let's see actually how much they weigh. Yeah, 932 grams for the 50mm, which is really not that heavy at all. And just feeling it there, it feels like the 90mm macro is actually lighter than the 50mm. I wonder what the weight is on the 90mm. There it is. Let's have a little look. Specification. Oh, slightly heavier actually, ever so slightly. It's interesting. It feels lighter to me, but interesting. But yeah, they're pretty lightweight, and they're small as well. They're really small. Okay, Alan Tutt, what are your thoughts on the new GH5 Mark II and upcoming GH6? We actually have a video going out on the GH5 Mark II tomorrow. I like them. They're an interesting camera. I mean, the GH5 Mark II, let's start there. The GH5 Mark II is essentially the same camera as the GH5 Mark I. You know, it is a very much an incremental upgrade. They've taken that body, they've taken that camera, they've taken the sensor and the design, and they've just tweaked lots of things on it. And I would expect the Mark I, it's still active right now, but I expect it to be discontinued relatively soon. And they've basically just taken every single element and given it a slight spec bump. So the sensor's got slightly new coatings on it, the LCD screen on the back is a newer one, things like that. The biggest difference is the processor, which is a completely new chip, one of the new ones from their S series, so the S5 and the S1 and everything. And that has given it a big performance bump in a lot of areas. So it's now able to do a lot of the things specs-wise and frame rates-wise, which the GH5 either couldn't or did, but in a funny way. So, for example, the GH5 Mark I could do 4K 50p internally, but you had to use the HDMI out. You couldn't do it internally, and things like that. So it's gotten around a lot of those odd little finicky points on the GH5. So that's a big one. It also has done a whole load of little tweaks to the UI and the specs, and you know what each one of the tools can do, the fact that you can have two zebras active at once, you know, small little things that the processing power is unlocked there. It also has the autofocus of the S5 line. So for the GH5, I think that is a big deal. I've been very critical a lot of Panasonic's autofocus systems. I know they are sticking with the contrast-based autofocus, which we've criticized a lot of times. I do think that they've pushed contrast-based about as far as they can now, and if they want to progress things further, which I really think they should, they need to move to a different, more complex system. However, they have pushed it really to quite an impressive point. It's not quite as good as the Canons and Sonys of the world, but we're talking about Canon and Sony's flagship camera models. We're not talking about anything down at the price point of the GH5. So when you start talking about the GH5, it makes a whole lot of sense. Trevor saying is Vlog included? Yes, it is with the GH5 Mark II. It's included out of the box. The autofocus makes a whole load more sense down at that price point. because it does work. It works good enough for vlogs. It works good enough for sort of travel things. You might get a little bit of twitching every now and again, whereas you might not with a face detect system. But it's really not the end of the world. And so I've been quite critical on it on some of their bigger cameras. On the GH5, I think I'm a lot more tolerant of it because it's so nearly as good now as the dual phase detect contrast dual pixel autofocus from Canon or Sony's hybrid AF system. It's so nearly there that for the lower price point of the GH5 and the sort of work that the GH5 excels at, that sort of lone, very fast-paced sort of travel, keep it really lightweight kind of work, I think it makes a lot of sense. So I think the autofocus is one of the biggest improvements. The other huge improvement is the live streaming. So it's not the most simple live streaming I've ever seen, but there aren't many cameras that can do it much better than this inside the camera. And so it is a really quite a powerful live streaming tool to keep things really lightweight and simple and small. There's not many situations where I would say current GH5 owners definitely go out and upgrade to the Mark II. For the most part, it's going to be such a small difference. It's not really going to be worth it for people. The exception to that is if you live stream day in, day out on the GH5. If you do that, I think the Mark II would be quite a big upgrade for you. The GH6, on the other hand, looks very interesting. Now, we don't know enough about the GH6 to really make our minds up. We know very little. We know, the max frame rates and things, some of the max resolutions, things like that. We don't know enough, and there's a few big things missing. There's codecs missing, there's autofocus missing. I would love to see them coming out with a new autofocus system. We have to wait and see as to what the GH6 is going to be. But the GH6 for people with current GH5s will definitely be that next big upgrade for them. The GH6 has the potential to be a really exciting camera. Will it upset the market in the same way as the GH5 did and the GH4 did before it? Probably not. I would love to see them try and make Micro Four Thirds into something which the full frame cameras aren't, because if you're just trying to use Micro Four Thirds to be a cheaper version of a full frame camera and just pushing forwards with cinematic image quality, all the rest of it, you're fighting a losing battle a bit because full frame is becoming more and more affordable. Whereas if you're trying to make the GH6 and that Micro Four Thirds sensor into something which full frame can't be, I think that could be a really interesting camera. And to me, the strengths of Micro Four Thirds are the small size, the small lenses, having as good an image quality as possible in a very small form factor for a decent low price point with decent battery life and weather sealing and all the rest of it. The GH5 is a really nice camera to take with you everywhere and shoot events with. So if they concentrate on down on what the GH5 is really good for, I think the GH6 could be a really, really good camera. Okay. BR Brown says, is the adapter for the XQD cards for using the Sony Z280 still available? I believe it is. Yep. If you get in touch with our sales team, they can find out for sure. Paul M. Field says, hi Carl, what would you like to see in a potential Sony A7 Mark IV? Do you think we will see 4K 60p in 10-bit? S-Cinetone profile. Thanks for your great work, Dan and Carl. Always a pleasure. Dan will be missed. I completely agree. Dan will be missed. So there you go. He's saying thanks for all of your hard work, Dan. And what would we like to see in a potential Sony A7 Mark IV? Good question. I mean, let's look at what their current cameras can do. So we've got the A7S Mark III. We've got the A1. So the A7 lineup needs to be a higher resolution than the A7S, right? I mean, it's got to be. And so I think you are pretty much spot on there with 4K 60p rather than the 4K 120. 4K 120 does seem to be fairly consistent across their entire lineup, but a lot of that is based on the same sensor as the A7S Mark III. You've got the FX3, the FX6, all with that same sensor inside it. With a different sensor that's higher resolution, not as high resolution as the A1, and it's much, much, much cheaper, I think they obviously have to limit it somewhere. I think 4K 60 is a very sensible place to limit it. I think we might also potentially see no intraframe codecs in it, so no XAVC-I equivalents. What's it called on the XAVC-SI on the alpha cameras? We might not get that. We might only get the choice between XAVC-S and XAVC-HS, but that's okay. XAVC-S is more than good enough for most people. I think, to be honest, all they need to do is release an A7 Mark IV with 4K 60 XAVC-S in it, but 10-bit, and they will sell a lot of them. That will be a very good camera with the autofocus performance and the system, the menu controls of the A7S in that camera. I think it would be a really, really popular camera for a lot of people. That is what I would like to see. Okay. Video editor bloke, welcome back. So I'll be the owner of a new Sony FX6 when Sony get round to making some. Yes, indeed. I've seen people online using them on a DJI RS2. How practical do you think that is? Would you get a separate mirrorless? It really depends. It's personal preference. If you need to run audio into it, it's tricky because, of course, the FX6 doesn't have the audio jack on the body. That's a much talked about issue with the FX6. If you're just running without audio for video only, then it's fine. It actually works really well, just completely stripped back on the RS2. A lot of the reasons to get a separate mirrorless for me would be ease of use. You have one camera rigged the way that you like it for handheld, and then you have one camera rigged the way you like it for gimbal work, and you can swap between the two seamlessly without having to spend time changing your camera over. That is the main difference for me. If you are in an environment like a narrative project, for example, where you want to be using the best camera that you've got, it doesn't matter whether it's on a gimbal or on handheld or on a tripod or whatever, then fine, use the FX6. If you were in a much more fast-paced, like corporate B-roll or events or anything like that, then having two cameras can be really useful for that. It's the same deal as in the stills photography world, right? If you see stills events photographers, they have two bodies. They have one with a standard zoom on it and one with a telephoto lens or a wide angle around their neck. And that is simply because in the fleeting of the moment, they can be up there with one, down, up there with another. You know, you don't have one body which you can then change the lenses for to get different things. It speeds you up massively being able to do that. And it's the exact same situation in video. In fact, maybe even more important because it takes an awful lot longer to change your camera into a gimbal setup than it does to change a lens. So I normally would recommend a separate mirrorless for fast-paced work, but it really depends on the sort of budget you're trying to work within, the sort of work you do, your personal preference. So that would be my recommendation. Okay. Mike F says, any field experience with the mini XLR connectors as used on the Canon C70 and Blackmagic Pockets? Not so much with the Blackmagic Pockets. Most of the time when I've been using those, it's been just using the 3.5mm jacks. We've used the C70 quite a bit, and mini XLRs are absolutely fine on that one. They've got really good preamps inside the C70. We have customers using both, and we very rarely get any comments back on the audio on them. I mean, are they the cameras with the best audio in the world? Absolutely not, especially the Pockets. Are they good enough, and are they better than if it didn't have XLRs on it at all? Definitely. Both cameras are, particularly the C70, are definitely good enough for most people to do simple corporates, pista cameras, documentary work, that sort of thing. You are obviously going to get much better quality, as you would with any camera, to be honest, by going to a separate recorder. You'll get much better preamps, much better bit depth, all the rest of it. But yeah, I certainly wouldn't be scared of the fact that they are mini XLRs. It doesn't seem to make too much difference in my experience. Okay, Video Editor Blokeson says, if yes, to a smaller camera to use, whether is the RS2 worth getting over the RSC2? Yes. The RS2 is a fantastic gimbal. It's one of the best one-handed gimbals I've ever used. The RSC2 has more limitations on it. I really think the RS2 is normally worth it in pretty much every single situation, apart from when you're trying to be as small and as lightweight as possible. Okay, Video Black again says the only benefit so far seems to be for the extra weight handling. It's much more than that. I mean, I don't have a huge amount of experience with them, but I believe that the way that they balance at the top is slightly different. I hear time and time again from customers that the RS2 is definitely the goer. Okay. And Diego's come along with a question that, to be honest, I don't understand. He says, what lens is good if you make video and you don't have any mount married? I assume you mean right now you're not tied into any mount. Just what lenses are good in general. Lots of them. I mean, the lens market is so saturated now with fantastic choice down at really good price points. Tell me a little bit about the kit that you're using, Diego, and a little bit about the work that you do, and I might be able to recommend you some things. Small Brown Fox says, can you suggest a gimbal that will accommodate the S1H and its heavy lenses such as the 24-70 f2.8 and 50-1.4? It can be a bigger rig if needed, as it's sometimes built up. If it's not built up, if it's just the camera and the lenses, I believe the Ronin, the DJI RS2 that we were just talking about will do that. I'd need to check. If you need to go bigger, it can be difficult. There's a bit of a hole in the gimbal market right now between something like the RS2 and larger big two-handed gimbals like the Ronin 2 and the Movies, that sort of thing. There is a bit of a middle ground. BR Brown says, are Sony still producing the S/S Pro and 256 gig? They seem to be out of stock everywhere. I think they are still producing it. It might take a while, and dealers like us normally aren't stocking it in terms of it's physically downstairs in the building. So that's probably why it seems to be out of stock everywhere, because it's simply not anywhere near as popular nowadays, really. Nowadays, I mean, the F5 and the F55 use it, and the Venice uses it. That's about it. So it's quite a small pool of our customers that need that media, so we don't tend to keep it on the shelves downstairs. If you get in touch with the sales team, we will almost certainly be able to source one for you. So ping us an email, sales@proav.co.uk, and someone will help you out there. Joe Sheridan, hi, will autofocus ever become a standard in commercials and or feature-length movies? No. Autofocus is a tool. Autofocus is not a be-all and end-all answer. Will autofocus become used in those situations? Absolutely yes. There's lots of situations where autofocus can do a much better job than even the most experienced focus puller. There is lots of situations where even the most average focus puller will do a much better job than an autofocus system. And that will always be the case. You don't want to rely on a computer for everything, no matter how good the computers get. So, manual focus will always have a part in high-end work like commercials and feature-length movies, like you say. Autofocus is not coming along as a technology to replace that and to put focus pullers out of work, all the rest of it. The job of a focus puller will change over time. So they will have to be able to do what they do right now, but then they will also have to learn the autofocus systems in there, learn when it's going to do a better job than they are, and learn how to use them and incorporate them into their workflows. For example, if you're trying to have a shot of a model walking towards the camera, the autofocus system, if you just want it to glue on them and that's the look that you want, Sony's or Canon systems nowadays are going to do that pretty much flawlessly. And so, you know, it's going to take even the most experienced camera operator, it's going to take quite a few takes before they can get that without it dipping in and out of focus, especially if you want to shoot wide open, at which point you might not even be able to do it. And so an autofocus system will just be able to do that. We do it time and time again here in the showroom as an example of autofocus. So will it be used? Yes. Will it become a standard? Probably not. Okay, Trevor Pinnicky, do you think we'll start to see Blackmagic RAW in more cameras? And what is holding more manufacturers back from adopting it? It benefits everyone. It's a complex situation. I do think in time we will see Blackmagic RAW in more cameras. People think Blackmagic RAW is this open standard. It's not. The protocols for it are out there for people to incorporate into their software. But in order for a camera manufacturer to put it in, it's not open source at all. Blackmagic RAW, the way it works is it needs to know the ins and outs of a camera sensor and color processing pipeline in order for it to work and record the raw signal. And so in order for Blackmagic RAW to be implemented in a camera, so let's take the C70 or, you know, the Panasonic S5, you know, something like that. In order for that to happen, Canon or Panasonic or Sony have to involve Blackmagic in the development of that camera. They need to let them in behind the scenes. They need to share the secret source of their sensor with a company that is effectively one of their main rivals. It's a company that doesn't actually have that good a reputation amongst the camera manufacturers because it's a camera company that came along all those years ago now and said, right, let's just offer everything that they're offering at the high end for a really low price. And so often they don't actually have the best relationship, I'd imagine, with some of these more traditional camera companies. And so for Blackmagic RAW to work, they have to be really, really in partnership with one another. And that's quite... do I want it to happen? Absolutely. I think Blackmagic having RAW in as many cameras as possible would be a hugely beneficial thing. Do I think it's going to happen in time? Yes. Do I think it's going to happen soon? I am not holding my breath. Maybe that's me being cynical with the way that the world is, but it just seems like a lot to ask of those companies. It shouldn't be a lot to ask. It should be just get along, guys, and it all will be fine. But from what I've seen of some of those companies, with the amount of people that have to be involved with a decision like that, it can be a hard thing to pass through more traditional companies. Okay, Diego's come back. So I do all kinds of video, run and gun, narrative, music videos. I'm currently using Sony, but I need something that won't die if I change to other mounts. I need to use it with a follow focus, maybe pack a zoom. Okay. Right, you've got a couple of things going on there. So if you want to be able to use it on as many systems as possible, you want to go something with a deep flange mount like PL or EF. You can adapt EF, for example, to Sony, Panasonic, Canon's RF mount, all of these different mounts that are hitting the market now. You're going to miss out on things like autofocus if you're using it with Sony. If you've got Sony right now, in order to get decent autofocus, you need E-mount lenses. Not necessarily Sony lenses. Brands like Sigma, for example, or Zeiss make fantastic E-mount autofocus lenses. But it does need to be E-mount, which you will only ever be able to use then on E-mount cameras. So you're between a rock and a hard place there if you want something that can work on all sorts of different cameras when you change cameras, or you want something which has good autofocus. If you want it with a follow focus, you're going to want something like a cinema lens like this with teeth and with proper linear focus and hard stops there. So you can hear that clicking. when it hits the end of its focus range. That's what you want for a follow focus, not something that spins constantly, because that'll mess up your focus markings. You also want something that is smooth all the way round rather than something with a linear focus motor. If you want to zoom, you're going to drive your price point right up if you want one in cinema lenses, especially if you want one that will work on everything. If you've got an okay budget, there are affordable cinema zooms out there. There's the Pictors from DZO. There's things like the Laowa lens, which actually you can get with a full frame expander on the back now, so that can even cover full frame sensors, which is really impressive for a zoom like that. But you're still talking about, $5,000 or so for your lens. So is it super affordable? No. Is it affordable for a large format cinema zoom? Yes, definitely. It's like a eighth of the price of some of the other ones out there. But again, zoom and follow focus and budget don't necessarily go hand in hand. Okay, Paul M. Films. How good is the autofocus of the Sigma native E-mount lenses versus the Sony GMs, let's say of the 24-70 f2.8? Very good, actually. Very good. We did some tests. I don't think we've done any tests on the 24-70, but we definitely did some tests in the latest Sigma contemporary lenses video that we did. Let me find that for you on the channel. Yes, the FX9 video we used the 24-70 Dennis reminding me of, and that might have a few bits in it. But if you want to see just in general, we've got this video on called Affordable AF Prime Sony E-mount Sigma I series. These are a little set of lenses from Sigma, which are really quite nice, actually. There we go, that's them. And the autofocus on them is actually really, really impressive. It's not quite as good as Sony's G Masters, but nearly there. It's the same situation as it is with Sony Sigma's EF mount lenses. Is it as good as Canon's L series lenses on EF mount? Not quite, but pretty much very nearly there. Good enough for most people anyway. Certainly good enough for me. And so yeah, I would not hesitate to recommend these for autofocus use on Sigma. And although I don't have a video on it, I have compared the 24-70 f2.8 and the 24-70 f2.8 GM. And it's the exact same situation as it is with these. It very nearly keeps up. It's just some situations the Sony is slightly better. But really, it's splitting hairs. Okay, Joe Sheridan, thank you for answering my question. One last one. What do you think will be the evolution of gimbals in the years to come? I.e., will the gap lessen between prosumer versus high-end, i.e. Movi or Ronin 2? I hope so, because the gap has lessened in every other area, in lighting, in cameras, in lenses. That gap has lessened. And if you look at gimbals, the one-handed gimbal market has just exploded with so many different options. And then the bigger two-handed gimbal market for bigger cameras is actually relatively quite small. I would like to see much more innovation in that area of the market, and some more affordable options in that area of the market, because I think there is definitely a market out there for that. Most people, though, are just getting the RS2 and then putting it into something like a Ring or something like that in order to get a bit more of the two-handed workflow and style with it. Okay, video editor bloke. The live on the PTZ cameras earlier was interesting. Thank you very much. Got me thinking, if you already have cameras, are there any affordable products that give you remote head control? Maybe doing zoom by Lanc, etc. There's some. Give you remote head control. There are some. They don't tend to be too affordable, to be honest. That is an interesting point, actually. aren't masses of those sort of pan tilt zoom heads that use a normal camera on them, and it would be a manufacturer like Panasonic, as an example, that I reckon could do that if they wanted to. They make some fantastic small cameras like the GH line, the BGH1, cameras like that. And the reason it needs one manufacturer is because that head and the camera would have to be quite tightly integrated together in order for that to work. You're unlikely to find, I suppose really you're talking about like slider heads there, you know, the pan tilt zoom heads for sliders or cranes. They tend to work, but normally you take the lens control and all the rest of it and the camera control and the image delay and everything back with a different system rather than the one that is moving the 3-axis head. So they tend to get a lot more complicated, nowhere near as simple as PTZs. I would love to see a relatively affordable PTZ mechanism, but without the camera in it, but with just a mounting point for you to balance your own small camera on it, like the Panasonic BGH1. That would be excellent. Yeah, but as you say, I suppose you could do it with a gimbal, but it seems like overkill. Yes, you could do it with a gimbal, but again, they're not as reliable as easy as PTZs. If you've got multiple gimbals doing that control, and then how do you do that? Do you have multiple controllers next to one another? And, you know, it just gets a bit complicated. The simplicity of a PTZ camera is something else on a different level, where you can have it all back to one controller. You can have it all back to one software. Most of the time, we don't even use a PTZ controller if we're having a PTZ on one of these streams. We just run it all through the TriCaster, where we can recall camera presets from the TriCaster directly with just a few clicks of the mouse. Very simple, very easy, and very straightforward. BR Brown, what would be your recommendation for the best hybrid camera? Okay, so if by hybrid camera you mean one that can seamlessly do the same job of high resolution stills and decent video recording, you've got three main options on the market right now. You've got the Sony A1, Canon R5, and Panasonic S1H. Each has its own strengths and weaknesses. To me, the best of the bunch there is the A1. I really like the A1. It comes with a price tag attached to it. You know, compared to the R5, it's nearly twice the price. So it does come with a price tag on it, but it is a fantastic, fantastic camera. The autofocus is amazing. The frames a second out of it are incredible. The 8K video out of it is so much better than I thought it would be. It really, really is an impressive little camera. I would say out of the bunch there, it's got the best of the bunch image quality, apart from the 8K RAW mode in the R5, which is really amazing. Now, the A1 is a camera that I struggle to recommend to a lot of people simply because of its price tag. You know, that is an expensive still/hybrid camera. And so if you're looking at the A1 thinking, I would love that, but I just can't justify that price tag, I wouldn't blame you. R5 exists, which as a stills camera is incredible, and as a video camera is not as good as the other two, but very good. You know, it's by far the best mirrorless camera for video that Canon have ever made, and both in terms of practicality with its normal 4K modes, and in terms of because the autofocus in it is just incredible. And then in terms of quality, that 8K recording in it and the 4K HQ mode as well, plus then the 8K RAW is just incredible quality. We did a bunch of comparisons on the YouTube channel a while ago between the R5 and a bunch of other things, and that 8K RAW just floored me with its quality. You know, I haven't seen image quality like that from anything other than super high-end cinema cameras. It really is exceptional picture quality. It comes at a price point, and that price point is you can't shoot with it for very long at all before the camera overheats and shuts down. But it looks incredible. So it's a bit of a a camera which fits into some people's workflows and some doesn't fit into some others. But just remember, you've always got that normal 4K mode to fall back onto, which is still very good. The S1H is sort of the jack of all trades there. It's not as good as the R5 or the A1 in terms of stills, in my opinion. It's also not as good as the A1 or, in some modes, the R5 in terms of video quality. But in other modes, in terms of video quality, it's way better than the R5 and the A1 in many ways. You know, you get full 10-bit, 4K, and 5.9K. You get RAW out of it. All of this without any overheating whatsoever. You've got the fantastic flip out screen. It's got a huge amount going to it, that camera. And although I say the stills aren't as good as the others, the stills are still very, very good. So as a decent price point option that can do pretty much most of what the other cameras can do, the S1H is a really good camera to go for. If you're looking for the best though, the other two cameras in most situations are better than the S1H, but the S1H can do all of it at an okay standard, whereas the others are a little bit more fiddly or come with a very high price tag like the A1. So that would be my advice there. Where did I get to? Let's have some tea. Right, we need to wrap up fairly soon, so let's just power through some of these last ones. Where did I get to? JC, can Micro Four Thirds lenses resolve for theatrical film production for festivals and or movie theatres, or just the Lumix Leica glass, which are known for their sharpness? Yes, they can. Stills, in terms of just resolving for picture quality, stills lenses for a long time have been able to do it. High resolution stills still far exceed the resolutions in video modes, and so yeah, in terms of pure sharpness, they'll be fine. You also asked, can the GH5 Mark II do wireless live streaming? The BGH1 cannot. Will one or both of this have it through firmware updates? I don't know about the BGH1. It can. So it has two ways of doing wireless live streaming. The first is it can connect over Bluetooth to your phone and then use your phone's interface and an app on your phone to control all the streaming settings, and then use your phone's internet connection to push the live stream out, which is a really nice way of doing it. The other option is if you have a computer nearby which you can load the settings onto in an SD card, you can do that, put the settings on the streaming settings and, you know, where it's going to go to, the RTMP settings, all the rest of it, onto an SD card, put that into your camera, then connect your camera to any Wi-Fi network that you happen to be nearby. Then it can just connect directly to a Wi-Fi network without anything else needing to be involved, and it can wireless live stream that way. And so, yes, the GH5 Mark II definitely has wireless live streaming. The BGH1, I don't believe does. It might have some of the same things coming to it. I'm not 100% sure. Dan is typing to me, so I'm just going to talk very slowly until he finishes typing. It has wired capabilities, yeah, so I think it's only wired only. Dan has been doing some of the research for me there on that. Cool. Okay, I think that is a really good place to call it. So thank you all very, very much for your questions. If you want to buy any of the products that we've talked about here, of course, just head over to proav.co.uk. You can go to our website or talk to our sales team, pick up the phone, speak to us if you want to. However you want to talk to us, we will be happy to help you. And yeah, thank you very much for joining me. We've got much more content coming, lots of videos coming out regularly again now. I know we've had a quiet couple of weeks. That's now changing. And of course, as I mentioned at the beginning, we are hiring for somebody to join the team to make these videos alongside us. So if that is something that interests you, please do get in touch on the jobs page on our website or on LinkedIn or Grapevine where it's being advertised. So yeah, thank you all so much for watching. I will see you all in the next one. Bye.
For tackling scenes that possibly we couldn't have tackled or captured faithfully before, I can get more out of this camera. My money goes further. It's as simple as that from a business standpoint. from a creative point of view, it's unquestionably unlocking more creative avenues for us as filmmakers.